Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Make Your Mark. I'm your host, Michael Crabio, and today we are going to be talking about the seven levels of communication with our special guest speaker, Stacey Gross. Stacey, thank you so much for coming on today. Before we get started, first, I would love for you to introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Have had the pleasure of working with Landmark Title and worked in the real estate industry for 30 years, 30 plus years, and have thoroughly enjoyed being specifically in lending, been a lender for quite a while. And so it's a great opportunity, and I'm thrilled to be here today.
Thank you, Stacey. Yeah, no, I appreciate you jumping on. Hear wonderful things about you from our Landmark family. But first, I kind of want to talk about the book because I feel like it's something that if you've read the book, you know how important it is to embody some of these attributes that the book covers, especially when we're talking about how we should be communicating with our clients, the different ways. When you first read the book, what type of impact did it have for you in your business?
When it first came out, and this was in the early 2000s, I think this is pre-COVID, right? So we're all
Mhm.
used to having more face-to-face opportunities, but we was really fine-tuning our communication and our relationships with people.
Right.
Now, post-COVID, we've gotten away from a lot of that. So a lot of the opportunities that we had previously have slipped away. And this is a great time now to get back to those basics when it comes to communicating and engaging clients and having meaningful relationships.
No, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Definitely nothing beats the one-on-one, of course. I know I recently just saw you at the gala for help, and you were just telling me that you recently reread the book. I don't know if the purpose was because you knew you were going to be coming on, but I think you told me you've read this book about 7 or 8 times, and I know in our business and in our life, things come and seasons go and seasons come. What's something that really stood out for you this time around when you had read the book?
That's a great question. One of the things that he talks about in the book is your spectrum of solutions, and we'll just touch on that today.
Hmm.
But he really talks about really getting a very good understanding of what are you offering your clients? Not just, hey, I'm listing your house or I'm going to show you houses in the market. What is your offering? And it's made me hit pause and think about a lot of times assumptions that I make that people just know. Oh, you're a lender, so you do, home loans. Well, there's a lot more product involved in that, right? And understanding
Yeah,
what we offer, but also does that match to what the client needs? So it was a good refresher.
yeah, no, for sure. And I know as we speak to many different people throughout our day to day, even in in your world and in my world and in the title and escrow space, sometimes business can sometimes or the communication that we have with clients can be sometimes very transactional, unfortunately. But what are some ways you've shifted that mindset to make sure that these interactions become more relationship based?
When you're doing your initial consultation with somebody, getting to really know them and understand their needs, the family dynamics, or if it's a single person, but understanding the dynamics of their situation and what their needs are
Hmm.
will transcend that individual transaction. Because building those long-term relationships will then ultimately help you continue to grow and potentially you building your referral network, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole point of having really great communication skills is that people feel like, yeah, she had my best interest in mind. And so, this is somebody that I would trust my mother, my friends with. And that's why we want to make sure that we're communicating at a very high level, and being effective in our communication with our clients.
Yeah, that's so good. The Landmark team just got back from a conference recently, and just kind of talking about the overall experience. Kind of what you're talking about is, as business owners, we can only get 5-star reviews, but how can we elevate the conversations, the experience to get that like 6-star care, because that's
Mhm.
ultimately what is going to drive people back to trust us and use us time and time again. And of course, work by referral. You said it. But yeah, no more questions. I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit, let the audience get to know you and the subject and topic that you're going to cover today. So you go ahead, do your thing, and this is the 7 levels of communication.
Great, thank you, Michael. Like I said, I'm excited. This is one of the books that like, I've read a lot of times, and if you saw my copy of the book, I've got it highlighted, dog-eared, notes in the side. So it's just a great book. So I encourage everybody to grab it. It's about 150 pages long. It's not a hard read,
Mhm.
and like I said, every time I read it, I pick something else up that I want to focus on in my business. So one of the key things, and he really kicks this off the book talking about the 7 levels of communication and this pyramid. So I'm going to work from my way from the bottom up on this pyramid. And thank you for having the graphic up there. Your bottom section is the information zone, right? And what he's saying about that is not to ignore that, but that's a broad base. So when it comes to advertising, being very focused on your advertising, maybe you're targeting a neighborhood, and maybe that's advertising in a magazine or local type of publication that's targeting a specific community, if that's what you're trying to get your message through. So that's just a broad base, but it shouldn't be your sole focus because ultimately we want to get to the top of the pyramid. The next portion is the direct mail. So direct mail, he talks about having that being, maybe it's testimonials or stories, success stories that you've had with a client in their neighborhood. Hey, meet your neighbor. Here's what we did to help them get into their new home or sell their home. But being more directed in that type of mailing. It's not just a blanket piece of mailing that's going to go out. And then the next part is the electronic communications. And, when this book was written, we weren't doing webinars. We didn't have such a robust YouTube channel. I think right now YouTube is still trending the #1 tool for when people are trying to find out how to do something. And so, using electronic communication via email, social media, I don't want to take any emphasis off of this because I think it's very powerful, especially in the environment we're in now. And that's probably why you see that as kind of a higher up on the overall pyramid, but using your electronic communication to be very thoughtful again. Using it to display homes, talk about different people that have gotten into that you've helped get into homes. Also, let them see the human side of you, right? Don't forget. And I see this a lot because I'm on social media and watching where I'm just constantly getting from a real estate agent, just information on, just listed or just sold homes, which is great, but I don't know who this person is. So
Yeah.
with your electronic communication, you want to make sure that you're building into that um, personal things too, so that people feel like there's a connection there. Okay, so something to keep in mind. Handwritten notes. We've gotten away from handwritten notes in a lot of cases, but handwritten notes, the nice thing about that is, he's an advocate for not using logo cards. Use something that's non-branded because then it feels more sincere, right? If I sent you a thing that just had Nations Lending on it, you'd be like, oh, well, this is just kind of a form letter that she's sending. Using non-logo, I have a really good friend of mine who always sends me postcards from places that he's traveled to. They're super cool. I've actually kept all of the postcards because they're super neat with where he's at. So stuff like that that just says, it makes me think, wow, he was thinking of me when he picked that up, right? Use blue ink. They recommend using blue ink when you're handwritten notes, and don't run a label printer. Make sure you're handwriting out the label, right? As you move up the chain, the ultimate goal is to create a group of ambassadors, which are going to be people that are going to be high influencers and referring you. So that could be a CPA, it could be a financial advisor. It runs the gamut. It could be your landscaper. You just don't know, right? Who could be in your referral network. But you want to identify people that would be ambassadors. And again, they're in your corner and you're also looked to as their go-to, because this group in the influential zone is going to be the group that you're going to be spending the most time staying in contact with. So you're going to be phone calling them at least once a month, right? Events and seminars, again, we used to do a lot of in-person. Now it's harder to do in-person types of events. Not impossible. People are still showing up. We've been doing some in-person events out in Goodyear and getting 20, 25 first-time home buyers to attend. You just don't know, right? There's people that are hungry for information. So making sure that you're staying in contact with your ambassadors so that they can help you um, grow your network, but also so they feel valued, right? You're inviting them to things. And maybe it's inviting them to a webinar, but again, you're engaging them. The other thing that they talk quite a bit about in the book is Google Alerts. So if you're not using Google Alerts, and once you develop that relationship with that ambassador, maybe you're finding out, hey, this is somebody who's really passionate about the Suns, or they're really passionate about the Cardinals. Hey, well, then I want to set up Google Alerts that would tell me, maybe the Suns made a big trade, so that I could say, wow, did you see that the Suns made a big trade? Again, I'm keeping that high level communication going, and it's not just, hey, can you refer me somebody to buy that's going to buy or sell a home? It's going deeper with the relationship, because trust me, that will follow. That piece will follow if you've developed a relationship and they know and trust you. That's the key, is getting them to know you, trust you, like you, and feel comfortable with you. And it's all about putting your time and energy and efforts into growing that relationship. Because ultimately, the top of the pyramid, and this is where, again, identifying who your ambassadors are, is having regular one-on-ones with those people, right? These are the people that, again, maybe you're meeting with them once every 6 weeks or 8 weeks. It could be too where you have one group of ambassadors and then the champions, that's the next level down. You meet with the champions once or twice a year, but your ambassadors, again, you're staying in regular contact with your ambassadors. And there's a lot of great CRM programs that are out there that you can use to help track. Because once you've had that one-on-one with someone, you really want to schedule your follow-up. You're tracking that person, and you're staying in connection. You're staying connected, right? Schedule your next one-on-one at the end of the one that you finish, right? So you're sitting there, you've just finished a great coffee with this person or lunch, and say, hey, when can we get on the calendar again in let's say a couple of months? Make sure that they understand that this is a long-term relationship that you really want to have with them. So just a few things to think about. In conjunction, all of these layers are important. All of them are important. And it's not one over the other, but ideally you're working towards getting to that one-on-one relationship with somebody that then you've got that relationship that they're referring you business. Okay. With your ambassadors, take the time, again, using a great CRM. When's their birthday? When maybe they have an anniversary coming up, right? Note where they work. It could be also, do they have children or no children? Are they a pet fan, right? Are they into cats or dogs or whatever their interests are? You really want to, again, get to know them. And obviously you don't want to sit down at your coffee and go, okay, so tell me again, what's your date of birth? And you want to be a little bit more smooth in getting all that information. And you don't have to get it all at one time. But just after you're done with your meeting with them, just sit down, take a few minutes to make notes about that person and what their needs are. And then at the end of every conversation, one of the things that Michael says is finish the conversation, and this should be with anybody. How can I help you meet your goals? How can I help you? And human nature is going to, if I say, how can I help you? At the end of the conversation, usually be, what can I do to help you? It's reciprocal, right? We're building a reciprocal relationship, but ending it with, how can I help you meet your goals, or answer questions for you? Versus saying, if you know anybody who's buying or selling real estate, send them my way. It's a little too canned, right? And the sincerity is just not there. I want to spend a few minutes talking about disc profile. Because as you're developing the relationships, whether it's your ambassadors or with your buyers and sellers, you really have to understand the personality styles. So there's basically 4 personality styles in DISC. There's a lot of assessments out there. I like disc, he likes disc, and the reason why disc is so powerful is because it's concise and it's easy to very quickly identify what kind of a communicator I'm working with. So the first one is they're straight to the point. That's your D. Second is social and steady. That's your influencer. The third one is steady and dependable. And the fourth one is cautious and perfectly accurate. So I want to take a couple of minutes. I'm going to read from the book, but this is really important because this is helpful. With your D, it stands for dominant. So they're very direct. They're going to be, like I said, straight to the point. They're driven, they're fast paced, impatient, efficient, and brutally honest. Don't take any kind of offense to they're brutally honest. They're just the kind of, it's like they're going to get to the point. I'm a high D, so I always say to my husband, hey, just read or digest it for me. Can you just get to the point? Because he likes all the details. The next is influence. Now, again, they're very social. They're typically salespeople. They're outgoing, friendly, emotional, and energetic. So they're going to have those highs and lows, right? We need to be aware of that. Steady or your S that's the steadiness is steady and dependable. They like to serve and please others. So a lot of times you'll find this is the person that might be a nurse or in an executive assistant role, something along those lines where they're more in a role of like to be behind the scenes. They don't necessarily want to be out in front in with regards to, they're not salespeople. They're just the opposite. And then finally, the C is a compliant person. Again, this is somebody who's a perfectionist. They like facts and figures and they follow the rules and they really like to just stay in their lane, right? But they want all the details. That's going to be your attorneys, your engineers, your lawyers. Those people are the ones that, again, they're going to want to see all the facts and figures. So you have to be mindful of them. So one of the key points with each of those personality styles is make sure you're matching your tone, your speed, and even body language, right? You want all of that to match them. So if they're leaning back in their chair, they're needing space, right? So lean back, give them that space, but mirror as much as possible what you're seeing with that individual. It'll help you build that rapport. He puts in the book, he says, care like everyone is an S, smile like everyone is an I, prepare like everyone is a C, and sell like everyone is a D.
Mm.
Right? So I love that. So let's get the conversation going. How are we doing on time, David or Michael?
We're doing great. I actually have a few questions for you if you don't
Okay, all
mind.
right,
Yeah.
let's go to your
Let's
questions and then
yeah,
I think
let's
I don't want to go
let's
over our time.
yeah, no, you're fine. Let's backtrack back to the graph here.
Yeah.
Um I mean, we had talked about this, and obviously, real estate, our industry is always changing the way that we market, just the market itself. But I look at this graph and I see the electronic communication. I don't really know if like social media should just have its own like deposit in there, but my point is we obviously can see that nowadays you talked about YouTube, there's TikTok, Instagram, all these different platforms that have informative zone to it and also an influential, like they there's like a mix and match depending on who you come across and what type of marketer you're seeing, especially in our real estate industry. But something that just blows my mind is you could take, that type of electronic communication and also push it, towards the top in my opinion. But
Mhm.
obviously we all know that you said like the belly to belly is the most important. Being in person is what really drives better relationships. But I work with a lot of individuals right now that have um seen a lot of success through the different platforms that they're utilizing, and it's driving them to meet belly to belly, which has been really cool to see.
Yeah.
um, and so no, it was just, I don't know if it was a question. It was just kind of like my food for thought on how I've seen social media drive in these communication levels.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think it's, I don't know, with AI and all these things, I think it's and we're in this era of like social media. I think it's always going to be there moving forward.
Yeah, I know, I think you're spot on. One of the things that I like to share that happened to me was about a year ago, I had a buyer contact me. It was a referral. He says, hey, look, I'm talking to another major mortgage company, and I went on your LinkedIn site.
Hmm.
And based on what I saw, I trust you to handle our loan, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful. When
Yeah.
you have, and you're right, borrowers, or pardon me, buyers and even sellers are going to they're going to first Google you, right? That's where they're going to go. They're going to Google you to look and see, how long have you been in the business? Are you doing a lot of business? What kind of business do you do? One of the things that I talk about too is when it comes to social media, trust me when I tell you this, it's kind of like what mom used to tell us, no politics and no religion.
Right.
Stay
Right.
away from those two things because you're going to isolate people. And when we're in real estate, we want to broaden our net. So using social media absolutely can help you grow your business. And I think that's why you kind of see it in the middle of this pyramid. And it probably still kind of applies in the middle because you're building that foundation in your pyramid. It's not your sole goal. Your sole goal is to get to that one-on-one, but ultimately what we put out there on social media, email, whatever we're doing, that YouTube, we want people to feel like, wow, this is a trusted advisor. And
Right.
so I know that if I use this person for to sell my home, I've got somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's definitely situational. Like I think there's an age bracket, unfortunately, that kind of go towards different platforms, right? And so it kind of just has to be more relatable to the consumer, to the buyer, seller, or whatever. But I would say this, people searching on Google now, Instagram and some of these meta platforms are intertwined. And so a lot of us are just looking at social media as an avenue of, hey, this is kind of like your new business card. This is kind of like your new resume. And so when somebody comes on here, how can we establish credibility right away for them to do so? And you just said it, like someone reached out to you because you're LinkedIn, because you had that credibility on there. And so it was just something that came to mind as far as when I'm looking at this chart, how powerful electronic communication has really become. But like one of the driving forces that some of my clients take on right now is they use the electronic piece to communicate, to then get their phone number, then to get to the one-on-one. So it kind of drives that impact, just the way that the graph is showing here.
Yeah, and to some of the stuff that, and hopefully I communicated this appropriately. This is where the whole point of the pyramid is to build, so you've got ambassadors who are
Mhm.
referring you,
Right.
right? You want to build this so that you're building out a network, and maybe it's 20 people, maybe it's 40 people, but there are people that consistently refer business to you, and you're their go-to and you're their go-to when it comes to, and again, that's why I say a lot of times this will be a CPA, financial advisors. This will be people that are maybe a business to business relationship that you have. So all of this builds towards developing a really strong group of people that are there referring you consistently.
Hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. And then as far as the disc goes, where can anyone that's listening right now, where can people find disc assessments? Where do they go to basically test themselves and find out where they lie in those brackets?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's several websites that you can go to that offer the disc profile for free. It takes about 10-15 minutes to go through the assessment. So it's a quick assessment, but once you complete it, you'll get the results immediately. And most of the time people are not totally surprised, but it'll give you a better idea where you're at. And you may
Mhm.
find that, hey, I'm really high in one section, but I'm also kind of high or in the middle on another section, or I'm really low in this section. So that when you're working with somebody who's at the opposite end of that spectrum, now you know what you need to do to again pace and match their communication style, because
Yeah.
it's about their communication style.
Do you recommend that you take the disc like every so few years? Like what does that really look like? I mean, I know as you get older, as you grow into the business or in your business, sometimes things change. Do you recommend agents, lenders, any real estate professionals to take the disc repeatedly over time?
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. One of the things you'll find is you gravitate naturally towards a certain style, right? So naturally, I know I'm a D, right? I'm just using that as an example. I know that I'm a D. So, but I've also been in situations where with especially like with work where I've had to really move towards another portion, and unnaturally my assessment has changed. So it can tell you too, based on where you're at work-wise in your business, how you're adapting to the different communication styles. And if you're too far out of your comfort zone, well, then that might create undue stress for you. So yeah, no, doing the assessment at random times in different intervals in life is not a bad idea.
Okay. No, good to know. I think those are all the questions that I had based on of all the information that you gave, and I think it's really good. I highly encourage anyone to go read. I'm probably going to read this book again. And it was funny while you're presenting, I was just looking at the DISC website right now, and there's options to become like a facilitator, and I'm like, that's not a bad idea to, give value to agents across the valley. So something to
Yeah,
look into for sure.
for sure, for sure.
But any final thoughts, Stacy, before we close out?
No, I mean, thank you so much for including me today, and
Yeah.
hopefully just kind of going over this gives some people additional ideas on ways to develop their relationships and their communication with people.
Yeah, no, yeah, providing great communication. I mean, we know on the escrow side, it's everything in our business, and so we know the importance of it. But you are definitely a wealth of knowledge, and we will definitely have you back on Make Your Mark. But